Claire, welcome to Keep It Moving podcast. You are a champion of healthy living and a good lifestyle. Why it is important to lead a very good, healthy lifestyle?
Okay, well, hi Xavier, thank you for inviting me to be here. It's an absolute pleasure. Yes, I'm very, very passionate about leading a healthy lifestyle. And in terms of what that means, my interpretation of it can mean different things to different people. But my interpretation of it is it's about holistic health. You know, we don't want to be doing things that are really good for our physical health at the expense of our mental health. We don't want to be doing things that are good for our mental health at the expense of our physical health. So we want to make sure that what we're doing is actually something that's going to keep us healthy for as long as possible, because I don't want to make assumptions here, but I guess most of us want to live as long and a healthy life as possible.
Yes, absolutely.
And if we are not looking after ourselves on a daily basis in doing things that support that, then we're not going to achieve that goal of living a long and healthy lifestyle. Hence why I called my business Your One Life, because it is the fact that we only get one life. And if we don't look after it, we don't look after the bodies that we're living in, they are not going to last us for as long as we want.
Then we lead a miserable life with a painful, joints and the unhealthy body, and that's not going to help anybody to lead a, quality of life.
Yeah.
I've been working in the NHS for a long time. Mm-hmm. Why don't we promote this healthy lifestyle, looking after our own body well in the NHS so far?
I think there is that does go on, but I think the problem is that the funding tends to be at the sharp end, doesn't it, in terms of resolving the problems, treating the problems, as opposed to preventing
the problem.
Exactly. So whilst obviously, public health departments, for example, and community health departments have got a focus on promoting a healthy lifestyle, I think it's not what the NHS is known for.
Yes.
And people only tend to start focusing on it when there's a problem.
Absolutely.
And that's, I think, the gap that needs to be addressed, and is an age-old problem, to be honest.
I think we all had it right from the start of the NHS, maybe, and we are still finding a way to resolve these problems. Mm-hmm. And, I've been promoting this healthy lifestyle and a healthy living, basically. Mm-hmm. But there are loads of confusion and taboo about, if it's a healthy lifestyle, it's just a mental health. Mm-hmm. Or just a physical activity. In my opinion, it's a combination of everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
If a person want to lead a good, healthy lifestyle, they need to have a sound body, sound mind, and a sound family support. So a combination of everything, as you rightly said, it's a holistic approach, and it is combination of everything.
Yeah.
For example, a person who struggles with the mental health, what advice would you suggest to them that which or what they need to look after in order to get the balance right?
I think what I often say to my clients is that, that old saying of, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yes.
You can't change everything all at once. And this is what happens when people tend to come to me for help and support, is that they're kind of thinking they've got to solve the whole problem immediately.
In one go.
And then that's just overwhelming. It's so overwhelming. So it's about breaking it down to what's the very next step. And I often talk about this with my clients in that, we know what the goal is. That's the mountaintop, but that's over there. That's like, you're not going to be able to get from where you are now to the top of that mountain unless you hire a helicopter. And how many of us can hire a helicopter? It's not going to happen. But if we know where the mountain is, and we know that we're walking in the general direction of that mountain, we've got to look at where we're treading, which is what is our very next step. And as long as our next step is in the direction of the mountain, and we keep repeating that, then we will, just as sure as if we put one step in front of the other, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Like a baby steps, isn't it? Nothing more than that.
Absolutely. And another concept that I often talk about is the film Groundhog Day, because when we're trying to change our behaviour, it's not easy, because we're having to go against the default position, which is the factory settings, if you like. Our brains and our bodies are designed for survival, and we're not designed for the modern life, and so where food is everywhere all the time, and all of the other things that perhaps are not quite so helpful for our long-term mental health, like drugs and alcohol and all of those things, and cigarettes, all of the things that we're influenced by. we want to feel better in the moment, so we reach for those things, but that's at the expense of our long-term health. So, if we can start to sort of pay attention to what small changes can we make and what are we doing on a daily basis that's actually in support of our long-term health, and be able to kind of literally just learn as we go, because we cannot just suddenly change our behaviour overnight, because that's not how we're hardwired.
Yes.
We have to keep practicing. We have to learn to forgive ourselves for the mistakes that we make. And what I love about Groundhog Day is it actually shows the whole process that the actor goes through, or the character goes through, from the position of, I don't know if you're familiar with the film, but it's basically this guy, he wakes up and he relives the same day over and over and over again. And he to begin with is like really frustrated, because he's like, I just keep making the same mistakes over and over again. I just, nothing I do is making any difference. And then gradually he realizes that by reflecting and learning on the things that happened, he can actually start little by little making small changes that eventually lead to the
more
bigger changes.
Result people are looking for.
Exactly.
Another important point before we go into the next important question, I want to ask your credibility, your experience of working in the NHS, working for the fire services, working for the prison services. You have seen people's life right from the start till the end, all stages, either healthy or behind the bars. What made you to think, people really need to change their habits and behaviors well in advance to avoid all the addiction problems that can lead to the prison life, or adapt a healthy lifestyle that take them to the completely different path?
Yeah, I think it's about accepting the fact that we have to take responsibility for our own life behaviour. No one else is coming to save us. And I think it was my own, stark realisation of that for myself, coupled with what I'd seen, and through the various jobs that I've done. So I started my career as a prison officer, and obviously, prison population is full of people who've, for whatever reason, ended up on the wrong side of the law. Some of those people, never intended to be there, and it's a massive shock to find that your life is going in a completely different direction to what you had intended. But it's about seeing that they were there as a result of the decisions that they'd made, rightly or wrongly, whether, for whatever reason we make decisions in the moment we don't necessarily appreciate the consequences of at the time. And so that was kind of a big awakening for me as someone who grew up in a middle class family. I went to a grammar school. I had no exposure to crime or anything like that. And then suddenly here I am and working as a prison officer. I was like, wow, where did that come from? I knew I wanted to help people. And that was my kind of first kind of step into that, really. And then that led me on to working for the NHS as a drug and alcohol worker to begin with. And again, my role there was to step in and be able to recognise when people were perhaps ready for change, or helping them to get ready for change, and helping them to realise that they don't have to continue down this path. They do have other options, but it's not easy to do on your own. You need someone sometimes to hold your hand through things so that you can see what's possible. And one of my clients, she says, I love how you say to me that you're there to believe in me until I can believe in myself. That's exactly the kind of role that I have with my clients. And it takes me right back to those days when I did that job, because that was my role there, was to help people to believe that they could change, and then show them that they could change. And then once they saw that they could change, they then sort of like bolstered their own self-belief that they could change. And then you're on that virtuous circle instead of that vicious circle. And so doing that role was really, really eye-opening and very rewarding. And then I kind of moved into sort of management positions in the NHS, and I worked across a variety of services, both from working in hospitals, where I saw babies being born. I worked in community services for children's early intervention and prevention services. So that was working with maternity services right through to child and adolescent mental health services and things like that. And then I moved into the community health service and supporting the service delivery of chronic pain and orthopaedic services and physiotherapy services. And again, saw what happens when, as the result of when people perhaps haven't been looking after themselves and perhaps not feeling that they have the power to.
Yes.
And so that kind of led me on to, and with my own experience as well, of up until my mid-30s, not looking after myself, not looking after my health and well-being, looking after everybody else, but not looking after me, because that's very typical of many mums, is that we look after everybody else.
And also the NHS worker.
Yes,
We're all happy to look after others. Sometimes we may not look after ourselves to the best of our abilities.
Absolutely. And so there I was, struggling with my weight and eating terribly and smoking like nearly 20 cigarettes a day, thinking every time I would go to the doctor or I'd have an ache or a pain, I'd be like, oh God, they're going to tell me to stop smoking. They're going to tell me to lose weight. And I can't. There's nothing I can do. I can't. I've tried so many times and nothing works. And then my doctor said to me one day, and I never forget what he said when I'd gone to him because I was struggling with my mental health, and he put me on antidepressants, and I said, I don't want to go on them because they'll make me put on weight. That was my historical experience of being on antidepressants. Oh, they make you put on weight. And so in the end, I agreed to go on them because I really was not really feeling great at all. I needed to do something. And then as a result of going on the antidepressants, sure enough, I put on a lot of weight because my weight over the years would go up and down, yo-yo dieting. So I'd go through periods of time where I was a healthy weight, and then I wouldn't stay there, and it would be not long before I would end up being, quite significantly overweight again, and not doing any exercise and all of those things, and just eating on the run and eating, not having any real appreciation of how much energy I was consuming, all of those things. And the times when I did lose weight, it was because I was smoking and drinking Diet Coke, and not really eating properly. So I went to my doctor and said, see, I told you the tablets would make me put on weight. And he said, no, they didn't. He said, they didn't put food in your mouth. You put food in your mouth. And I'm like, ouch.
Yeah.
I wasn't very happy about that.
I know. Is it because we seek a little bit of gratitude of what we are doing? I'm trying to lose weight. Let me give a little bit of appreciation to my own body, and we chuck loads of stuff through our mouth.
Yeah. I mean, what happens is that, if you think about evolutionarily speaking, we are designed to eat when food is available. And we're only supposed to lose weight when food is not available. So, of course, as soon as we put ourselves into this artificial situation where we need to lose weight, or we want to lose weight rather, we then reduce how much we eat, which then puts us in immediate conflict with our biology, because our biology is, food is scarce, we better conserve energy, we better get hungry, we better seek out more food. And that's what we're constantly fighting against when we're trying to lose weight. And when we see food, we want to eat it. So, of course, there's 2/3 of the population are either overweight or obese now. And that is 2/3 of the population. That is scary. And that is an environmental, societal issue, because food is all around us all the time, and it's feeding literally into our survival instincts. And it takes an iron will to fight against that. And of course, when you then have medication like I was on that was, perhaps increasing my appetite, my GP was right. It wasn't, the tablets didn't put food in my mouth. Absolutely. I chose to do that, but I did so as a result of the increase in appetite. But if I had been more aware of that was what was causing it, I could have put strategies in place for myself to avoid overeating or eating differently. But because I didn't have the knowledge, the understanding, and the resilience to do that, I put on the weight. But it was his words at that point that made me go, wow. I didn't like what he said. I was quite upset about what he said, but then I thought about it and I thought, you know what? He's right.
Yes.
I put the food in my mouth. I had a choice. It made me realise I had a choice about what I was putting in my mouth. And there were a number of other things that happened sort of over the subsequent couple of years that really sort of pushed me into the action that enabled me to solve the problem for myself once and for all. But it was that recognition that I had the power, because I was like, well, if it's my fault that I got to this weight, that means that it's my responsibility to do something about it.
As well.
Yeah, and that's what I did, ultimately in the end.
it was my privilege to work with you for around 4 years or 5 years. We worked together.
I think it was longer than that.
Yeah. Oh my God. Claire used to be my manager, deputy manager, and you did a great job for the NHS. And it's my privilege to see you evolving through the life channels and the changes. And now you are champion of health and well-being in people's mind. And you're making a huge impact in many people's life. And this is all quite personal. And you're not serving anymore for a wider audience, or you're not dealing with 10,000 referrals we get in the NHS, which you will be thank you for. But it's very nice to see you. Thank you for tuning in so far. Let us talk about our main sponsor of this podcast, Excel Health. Excel Health is a highly specialized team focused on getting you back on your track so that you can enjoy your life without any aches and pains. If you are a person want to be independent in your own lifestyle, or enhance your performance in your cycling or golf, any of your sporting events, or you're recovering from any of your injuries or pain, if you're looking for somebody to help you to get back on your track, we are the people. Excel Health have employed highly skilled physiotherapists, podiatrists, dietitians, and other healthcare professionals to get you back on your normal lifestyle. We have seen thousands of patients over the months with a chronic neck, back, or any joint pains, and also with the loads of medical ailments, which limits people's performance and quality of life. People often struggle to sleep with the aches and pains. If you want to get back to your normal sleeping pattern and get back on your golf course or cycling, or even if it is simple task as getting your grandchildren to school and back, and to be independent, you need to look for a partner that is from Excel Health. At Excel Health, we always use state-of-the-art tools for our trade, and also all the clinicians are highly experienced with years of experience under their belt. They've been using manual therapy, hands-on treatments, soft tissue massage and mobilizations, and all these things will enable you to get back to your normal life. When I say normal life, just normal pain-free sleep, walking from home to the school with your grandchildren or children, or rolling over at bed at nighttime, or cycling, golfing, any of those things which you consider as a normal life. And also, we are highly experienced with all the medical knowledge which needs to differentiate whether it is just a simple sciatic pain or a complicated medical problems underlying. We would differentiate it for you. I know finding a physiotherapy provider is not that easy. There are a couple of choices out there. But if you're looking for somebody who are highly experienced, specialized in the field, and also a very friendly team you want to work with, not looking forward anywhere, just contact us at Excel Health. Our main phone number is 01795 60 60 66. If you want to be up to date with what we do, just follow us on all the socials we have, which will be on the description and on the bottom of this video. And looking forward to helping you to get back to your normal life. Now, it's time to get back to our podcast. The next important question I want to ask you, why it's so hard to lead a healthy lifestyle in today's modern world, and what can we do to make it easier?
Okay, yeah. So as I've kind of I talk about a lot is the fact that we are not designed for the world that we find ourselves living in. Food is everywhere. And we live in a society where we want instant gratification. And, it's a want it now, have it now society. We don't have to wait for anything, including the food that we eat. If we're hungry, we can literally just get on the phone and order something. It'll be arriving in 20 minutes. We haven't even got to go and leave the house to get it. Everything is at our fingertips. And that kind of really feeds into our kind of like natural makeup as humans. And so what we have to kind of accept is that we can't have all of the things that we want and be a healthy weight or have a healthy body and mind if we want to consume all of those things that we want to consume. So what I often talk about with my clients and with my audience in general is the fact that we've got to find a compromise. Just like we as parents, maybe we can't take our kids into the toy shop and say, you can have all the toys on the shelf. We say to them, don't we? You can have one. You can have one toy. Which toy do you want? And it's the same principle here. We can't just have everything that we want.
Because it's available in front of your eyes.
Exactly. And we as a society, I think, have just got used to having everything we want when we want it. But the cost of that we're paying years later. And I think it's about recognizing that every action we take has a consequence. And there's a book called Atomic Habits by a chap called James Clear. I absolutely love his quotes. He regularly shares quotes, and one of them is, every vote you take every action you take is a vote for the person you wish to become. And what that does is it helps us to see that for every action we take there is a consequence. Even if we can't see what that consequence is immediately, if we keep repeating that action, where do you want to be in 10 years? It's the fork in the road, isn't it?
Shocking.
Where do you want to, if you take these actions, you can continue to take these actions. Yes, you may feel like you're missing out on something in the short term, but at what cost in the long run, And it's about finding the trade-offs and the compromises. So it's not about saying you can't eat cakes and chocolates and biscuits. I love cakes and chocolates and biscuits. I am the last person that's going to be saying you can't eat cakes and chocolates and biscuits. But it's how do you fit them in so that you don't exceed your energy budget? Because we all have, and I'm talking specifically about weight here, but obviously the same applies to all sorts of different behaviours we may engage in that are perhaps fly in the face of a healthy lifestyle. But my speciality is about weight. I talk about the concept of an energy budget, just like we have a financial budget. So if we continue to spend more than our financial budget, what's going to happen? We're going to get into debt. We're going to get into trouble. The same is true when it comes to our energy budget. Each of us has got a finite amount of energy we can consume without gaining weight. If we are continually consuming over that budget, we're going to gain weight. And we're going to have to pay it back at some point, or we're going to suffer the consequences of that. So if we are more aware of actually what our own individual energy budget is, we can then make more informed decisions. So we can find the room for the cakes and the chocolates, just like we can find the room with our financial budget for going
holidays.
out, for holidays, for going out,
nice
and things
dress
like that.
And everything.
Exactly, but we don't spend the vast majority of our money on the treats. We spend the vast majority of our money on paying the bills and fulfilling our responsibilities, and then we've got that bit left, if we're lucky, to do those other things. And it's the same principle when it comes to our energy budget. So just by becoming more aware of what we're consuming, we can then, and how that impacts on our weight, we can then make more informed decisions about how to get the best of both worlds. So if we think, I tend to talk about 80-20 principles of, if 80% of the time we are eating nutritious food, and that leaves us 20% for whatever we fancy. But the most important thing, I think, where people get confused is like, I've got to eat healthily. And they think that means they can eat as much as they like of healthy food, but it still doesn't matter where that food comes from, where that energy comes from. If you are consuming more energy than you need, no matter where the source is, you will still gain weight. So by becoming aware of what our budget is, in the same way as when we go shopping, we look at the prices of things, don't we? So that's when we look at the calories, the energy that is in our food. We know how much things cost from an energy perspective. We can see how can we fit that in and still stay within our overall budget. And our bank balance, we need to check our bank balance on a regular basis, don't we? So that's when, we might weigh ourselves so we know how our energy consumption is impacting on our balance, which is our weight. And it's just by raising our awareness, but without judgment, because the food doesn't care whether we eat it or not. But we need to have that awareness so that we can make the decisions that support our health. And if we can do it and say, actually, it's just numbers. It's just data. It's not a judgment on us. It's like being able to literally weigh things up and decide what we want, but knowing that if we continually consume more than we need, we are going to cost ourselves in the long run. And it's, what do we want most?
I would be intrigued to know what goes in your mind when you see the Deliveroo guys, Just Eat guys, picking up McD orders on a Sunday early morning and delivering to somebody We can't judge people based on that, but where does the society goes towards? Yesterday I was listening to a news where India's, before they go into delivering their central budget, they took a health check of the country. And the final recommendation the Physical Institute made to the government before they published the budget, the amount of time people spend on their mobile phones, the use of WhatsApp, use of Instagram and Facebook, and also the easiness of fast food availability, it's shocking the nation. So the authority have told the government, you need to make provisions now. And why don't we do something like this in this country?
I think efforts are being made. I think that we just don't necessarily pay attention to them. The Times newspaper last year did a big year-long study of how our lifestyles are kind of impacting on our health, and obviously obesity was one of the things that they looked at. They looked at a number of things, and what I think was really interesting to come out of that was, I forget the name of the person who said it, but it was a professor, obviously especially in public health, said that how we eat now and how we consume generally is very much like smoking was in the 1970s, where it's very socially acceptable. And if you think everything we do revolves around food, and in my view, food has become far more important to us than is healthy for us. And I think the government is starting to become, I think the government for a long time has become aware of the problem, but I think the problem is the solution isn't easy. The solution has to be multifaceted, but I think the environment that we find ourselves living in is really powerful. We're constantly being manipulated and influenced by the food and drink industry, and we're in conflict all the time because we're having food literally thrown at us all the time at the same time as we're having the messages where you need to lose weight, and then we feel bad about making choices, and I feel we have to defend ourselves for wanting to eat a biscuit, and it shouldn't be like that. We should be able to have freedom of being able to enjoy our food without guilt, but know how much we need to consume. And I think, the government have been making steps to address this by, forcing, I think businesses over 200 staff need to put the calories on the menus, for example, which for some people is great because they're like, oh, now I know what choices I can make when I go to the restaurant. And other people are going, but that's just going to make me feel obsessed because they've developed a very toxic relationship with food because of their conflicts that they felt over the years in relation to their weight. And some people are very vulnerable to developing eating disorders, and that kind of information for them is the last thing they need. But so how do you get it right for everybody? You can't. There is no one size fits all. So I think it does come down to us as individuals needing to be more aware of our needs and the consequences of our behaviour, and being able to have the right knowledge and understanding of our own individual situations and what we as individuals can do. And that is not easy. This is why I deliver the service I deliver, is because I know how difficult it is to do that on your own. If you imagine trying to manage our survival instincts, because that's exactly what we're having to do when we're trying to say no to all of this food that's around us, that's not easy to do on our own. We need help. I think, and unfortunately, I think the size of the problem and the amount of funding that is available to solve that problem, there's a massive imbalance there. And so by education and having someone there to kind of guide you and support you through literally learning how to do things differently, because we are not designed for the world we live in. We have to learn how to change our behaviour, just like learning to drive. You don't go from that very first driving lesson to driving confidently on the motorway overnight. That takes years of lived experience.
Months and months.
So, years, before you could actually reach that point where you're fully competent And even then we still make mistakes, don't we? You know,
Absolutely.
you never get to the point where you're perfect. And it's about accepting that when we're trying to change our behaviour, that takes lots of time and practice, and we've got to forgive ourselves for the mistakes we make.
So, people watching this at home or while they're running and listening to it, I want them to get a clear message about what is healthy lifestyle, what is healthy living, and what are the 5 actions they can take today that will create a simple habit, lead to a better outcome in their own life. Give us 5 tips, please.
Okay. So healthy lifestyle, there are a number of kind of like pillars to health.
Yeah.
And obviously what and how much we eat is very much an important part of that, because we are what we eat at the end of the day, and how we eat affects how we feel. So if we are having most of our food coming from nutritious sources, minimally processed as much as possible. Now, there's a lot in the news about ultra processed foods being really, really bad for us, which if we're consuming them to excess, yes, they are. But if we're consuming them in small amounts, they're not. And there are certain processed foods that are actually still really good for us. So we don't want to be cutting out all processed foods. But if we can think 80-20 principles, and also making sure that what we're consuming is not more than we need, because it's the consuming more than we need that is the biggest problem when it comes to weight. We also want to make sure that we're moving. Movement is so important. Now, obviously, if we're talking about weight specifically, we don't want to be over exercising if we're trying to lose weight, because again, that puts us into direct conflict with ourselves, and our bodies are going to fight back and go, I need more food. I will get more hungry. I used to struggle with that. It's like, I've done all this exercise, I'm starving hungry, I need to eat as much as I possibly can. And then, well, what was the point of that then? Because I was measuring my exercise in terms of how many calories I was burning, and then I would end up eating them back. So that kind of didn't solve the problem. So walking is one of the absolute best things that we can do to support weight loss.
That's easy to do.
For most people, yes. And obviously we don't want to be going, right, okay, I'm only doing like 2,000 steps. I need to do 10,000 steps. Start with maybe 3 or 4.
Moderation.
Then once you've accomplished 3 or 4, push it to 5 or 6, and rather than trying to do things overnight, it's like we need to build up our stamina. We need to build up our resilience to these things rather than just trying to do everything all at once. We need to make sure we're drinking water or at least, at the very least, drinking low calorie fluids or low or no calorie fluids. Now, people say to me, oh, well, I
hate water.
They say, I hate water, but I do drink tea and coffee, and I know I shouldn't be drinking tea and coffee, and I should be drinking more water. And I say, well, actually, as long as you're drinking fluid, that's great. Obviously, ideally, we want to be drinking water, but if you're having some of your fluid coming from water and some of it's coming from, 2 or 3 cups of tea or coffee, and you enjoy it, because let's face it, we've got to enjoy life. We've got to enjoy the journey. There's no point in putting ourselves into a lifestyle that is healthy, but we hate it.
Yes.
Because we're not going to sustain it. And actually, going back to what I was saying about holistic health, we need to be making sure that what we're doing, if it's good for our physical health, it's got to be good for our mental health as well. So I say to people, don't waste a single calorie on food you don't like, because you will not want to eat it. So you've got to make sure that what we're doing is sustainable and enjoyable as well as healthy physically. So don't feel you've got to cut out all your tea and coffee. If you like drinking tea and coffee, just look at everything in moderation. Getting enough sleep. Sleep is has a massive impact on our ability to sustain the behavior changes that we're trying to make. Because if we're tired and grumpy because we haven't had a good night's sleep, what are we going to do? We're going to reach for the sugary foods. We're going to reach for the stodgy foods. We're going to reach for things that are not healthy for us. We might even end up snacking in the evening, which means that we're not going to have a very good night's sleep the next night, because our bodies are still trying to digest the late night snacking. So by addressing sleep, it can actually undo a lot of those negative behaviours and put us in a more healthy and helpful frame of mind. And also stress management. A lot of our problems of trying to sustain new behaviours is because we get very stressed and we get very tired, and we then default to factory settings, which is go back to doing what we always do.
All this time.
Yeah. So if we're not addressing our stress management, then we're making it harder for ourselves. So.
Perfect. If people feel that they are missing out loads of information, And I strongly recommend them to find your book. And where can they find the book? It's Your One Life. It's an amazing book. I've read half of it. I haven't read the full of it. Where can they get your book?
Okay. So my book is actually called How to Eat Less, and you can get it on Amazon, or you can visit my website, www.youronelife.co.uk. And if you find the resources tab, it's under there in the books section. And you can either buy it directly from Amazon from that link, or you can buy it directly from me and I will send it to you in the post.
Very lovely to talk to you, Claire, and I admire the passion you have towards healthy lifestyle.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.